something like Sherlock, when we remember when we sat in the pub after watching the pilot episode back down in Soho, sort of trying to work out like who was going to do what, who'd got an idea, who'd got a sense in for what, and the strengths and weaknesses, I think, mean that we both end up doing things that we might not necessarily do if it was just one or other of us. Bit more like being in a band.
Originally, the producers had some experience of something that I'd done. Mark had experience of working with Michael, and so we just ran the idea past it, like, what if we did it together? Would you be okay with that?
Yeah.
And they said yeah, and we then thought about what we could do, and who could write what, and which bits would be which.
When there's 3 90-minute episodes to do in 6 weeks, effectively, then everybody in the crew is really, really important, whether that's orchestrators, whether it's engineers, whether it's players, everybody working on it, and we've got an amazing crew, really, really amazing. And I think it's sort of been open enough for everybody's ideas to be valid, and everybody's contributions, whether it's Nick mixing it, whether it's Rail doing some great playing and some great bits of arranging on it, or whether it's ideas that come directly from you or I straight through. I think
it has to be a sort of egoless process in order to get this stuff on the screen, and that means trusting talented people to do what they do, and that was one thing I always said about Michael Rock in the early days, that he was like an egoless collaborator. It's like there's no
talentless collaborator,
no kind of like kind of shivering at a suggestion that something might not be right, or kind of biting in. It's all about, we need to get across the finish line with this thing. It's like we need it to be the best that it can possibly be in the circumstances, which are like way too little time and probably way too little money, in a way, to do what we were, that you dream of doing. And to do that, you do rely on sort of brilliant people being brilliant. We all sit down with a notepad and go through the film and talk about where music starts and what it should be doing, which is what you do with any movie. You just think this is the sort of thing that needs to happen here, and they might have had a bit of temp in that they like the way that something moves or feels, and that might be a guide, and sometimes they know that it's wrong, and sometimes they haven't got anything.
And that's really the opportunity, not just to read what I might feel about it, what David might feel about the show, but also to really connect with Paul McGuigan if it's one of his episodes, to get a sense of, because they've always, even if it's quick like telly, they've been on it for weeks and months, and we're coming to it with fresh eyes. So a lot of the time you're kind of trying to plug us directly into his psychology, director's psychology, and how he feels about it as possible, but then also bring something new to the table as well, because it's kind of, you don't just want to give the director exactly what they think they want, because sometimes they've hired you because you've got an approach as well. So we also like sit around and discuss, mostly amicably.
I mean, part of it is in the actual speaking about it is when people start to clarify their thoughts about what it is that they really think about it, and also from a directorial or a production perspective, when you're having a discussion with someone who needs to kind of understand the underlying drama and the underlying storytelling, is that we're dealing with a film that they've made, not with a film that they've got in their heads. And so there is a sense of sort of awful realism about, well, this is actually what we've made, this is what we're making, and it's trying to sort of garner all the aspirations and the hopes that everyone has got into this movie, and make sure that to the best of our ability that it stays there, and if it's absent, perhaps to bring something to it, or if it's present, to make more of it.
I did 2 or 3 films on the trot last year, all on my own, and coming back then to Sherlock at the end of the year was great, because it is like sort of it's like Robbie leaving Take That.
We just phone each other up and go like, "How's your film going?" He goes, "It's a nightmare." "How's your film going?"
It's a nightmare.
And when
it's very nice having someone just someone that you can legitimately have moan and share the triumphs and the wonderful bits, but to actively moan about the detail of this stuff with, because it is a lot of sitting and staring at computers by yourself.
Yeah, and resisting the urge to go to the opticians. Not an urge, a need.
Once there was a basic language there that everybody felt comfortable with after the first series, what was brilliant this time was because each of the episodes this time's got a really distinctive visual style, and we I think could really stretch this time and do something very specific for each episode, which has been brilliant. So the first one was sort of romance. It wasn't really romantic, but it was certainly deeply emotional, and very pent up emotion. And then Hounds, which was from us was quite harsh, electronic and distorted, and really trying to bring some quite contemporary sounds to the table. And then the last one is just like heartbreaking.
It's a very intimate medium. You realise you're in people's houses. Cinema people go out and they pay usually quite a lot of money to sit in a dark room with hundreds of people and have this shared experience. And there's, you can get quite elated by that, and it's an extraordinary experience and a unique experience. With TV, it's like, especially this kind of episodic thing, it's like every week, and people make an appointment with it, and they kind of look forward to it, and they share it with their family in a way that they don't with anything else. I mean, it's a really fascinating medium in a way, and it's
lovely, very powerful, very connected in a really good way, I think.
And that's a good, that's what I like about it more than anything. I mean, obviously Sherlock's a brilliant piece of writing and performing art, and directing art as well. But I like the idea of kind of not in a creepy way, but being in people's
being in lots of people without them
with the lights off.
Every now and again, there's just something on screen, and just a space opens up in a movie or a TV episode that everything has framed it emotionally, the performances, the writing, but actually what's then left is for the music to speak, and it's a challenge when it happens, because you're not just kind of like chugging along in the background. But there's some stuff in the last episode where I come back for.
The last 20 minutes of the last episode, I think, is really quite a shock. But for me, I think the Lara Pulver, the Adler, the woman, the first one, just because I like a bleak, hopeless, yearning, dark, turbulent, emotional
resonates
nightmares with relationships. You've got Eos Tater, who's one of the violin players from Bond, the string quartet, and she came over, and Benedict came here, and we both sat up upstairs. She lent him one of her violins, and I kind of left them to it. But he's unbelievably sort of razor sharp in learning. He's absolutely never forgets a thing. He picks it up immediately. You see those Japanese robots, where someone does that and turns a screw or something, and then the robot kind of does it, and he's kind of like that. He kind of just does it, and then all of a sudden, like, he knows it, and he completely inhabits the kind of mentality of the musician. And he probably could play in a very short amount of time. I think if he set himself the task of learning properly, he probably could play the violin.
I've never seen the movies, actually. I've never seen the other movies that are at the moment. And I'd seen some stuff when I was a kid, but I went out and bought the Collected Homes.
Did you?
I did, yeah.
I've never seen a single television movie. I watched the first Robert Downey Jr. one once. I mean, because I think they came out about, was it a month or two before or after us? I don't know. They're all sort of happening around about the same time anyway. That was the first one I saw. I mean, obviously I knew about it. I didn't see The Great Mouse Detective, and I hadn't read the books. But I mean, my son's just bought the entire works of Conan Doyle based on Sherlock, this series. And I think some of his friends are doing the same thing, so it seems to be...
There's the fresh pleasure of going back, like studying Pink from last season.
Yeah.
If you then go back and read the original, it's like funny in reverse. It's sort of... And I know I should have known it better first, and then we got to the joke first time round. But then I get you find out exactly how clever Mark and Stephen are.
Yeah,
which is ridiculously.
But
clever.
also, I mean, I think we're not scoring the book. I mean, we're scoring the show, and that's the only thing you need to know is what's happening in front of you in terms of the show. And because there hasn't been a kind of musical blueprint for Sherlock Holmes, then it's not like James Bond where there's a sort of expectation that it will sound a certain way, and especially as this was like set in a contemporary time, so we don't need to worry about sort of music boxes and kind of street organs and things like that, and no Victorian paraphernalia. It was absolutely kind of contemporary, so it was like starting from scratch. So now probably going back and reading them would be even more fun because you kind of have an idea about where it's all come from. And I think that's what's happening. I think it's kind of generating a certain amount of interest in the original literature, which has got to be a good thing.